so basically this is what we're going to do today. Just a quick sample. Your final product will look slightly different because we are using a different metal binding. You'll be using the end caps. So you just plug the whole thing in and glue it in place. So what I have here is slightly different, right? But essentially what you will get is a key ring that has got this long cord attached. Okay, and this one end here has got a lobster clasp. So you can hook this around your bag or your jeans or whatever and hook it back onto the ring to create a loop. Yeah, so you can, let's say you're going out with a small purse or a small pouch, you can hook it onto the zip itself also. And then this will be secure attached. So this can, then you hold your keys onto the key ring. This is how it's designed. So if you've gotten the lanyard, then you will have the metal findings for the lanyard itself. So the concept is the same. The ends of the cords would just be attached to the metal findings here. And then you can then loop this onto your card holder, and then you can wear the lanyard around your neck. So that would be the two versions of the cords that we'll be making. Okay, so let's take a look at your kit that you have received. Okay, so this is the kit. If you were to take a look at the contents, it has this following items. So you would have the Kumihimo disc, right? You will have the E3000 glue that you use to attach the knotted end into the metal findings. You also have, this is the tip for you to attach to the glue tube. Then you have the key ring. There's also this end with the end cap and the lobster clasp. Okay, so we will start off with the key ring. We will attach the thread itself to the key ring to begin, right? So the rest of the items, you can just keep it into the container first. Okay, and put it aside with the glue. So this is the cords that we are using. Just need to untwist it and release the knot. Okay, until you get the yarn unfolded. Okay, so once you've got the yarn, okay, unwound, you will just need to fold the yarn into half. So the ends are roughly meeting. So this is not an exact measurement for some of the yarn. So you might have some ends that are longer or shorter. It doesn't matter very much. You just want them to be fairly even and fold in half. So hold on to this point where you fold the yarn in half. So we will start by attaching all this yarn onto the key ring. So there's this swivel portion here at the base of the key ring. This is where you would insert the loop. Okay, so we will insert the loop of the yarn through this portion, this metal D ring part. Okay, and then through the loop, you will pull the rest of the yarn. So it's making a hitch, then just pulling it tight. Okay, so now the cord is securely attached to the key ring, and this is what you will see. Okay. The order of the color on the cords, how it is arranged at this point is not crucial. You just need to make sure all of the yarn is attached, that you don't have one loose one hanging out. All of them are neatly attached in this hitch. Okay. So then let's take a look at this weaving disc. So it is numbered so that it is easier for you to work things out. Today we are using 8 chords. So we have them in 2 colors. Each color has got 4 chords. Okay, you can change it up into 3 colors, 4 colors, or more. As long as you remember, if you have 2 colors, you need to have 2 blank spaces. If you have 3 colors, you need to have 3 blank spaces. Okay, so today we are not going to maximize all the spaces available on this disk, but if you want to proceed on to do your other projects, you just need to remember any color, number of colors or chord sets that you use, you need to have 1 slot empty for that set. Okay, so let's start by putting the keyring through the center. Okay, and then you just hang on to it. So you just pull and doesn't drop too far back. Okay, it's easier for you to control what's going on later. So let's start. Okay, I'll start with the yellow color. I will put 2 chords in the 2 spaces. Okay, with the line sandwiching between these 2 chords. So it kind of marks where the position is. So you just put it through, pull through the foam. There's a gap here. So you keep the chords in place. Okay, then you would do a half quarter turn. Then in the next space, I would do the red colored chords. Same thing, I will have the string or the yarn suspended with the line between the 2 strings. Okay.
The keyring should be still roughly centered. Yeah. I realize mine is getting a bit slanted.
It's fine. You will adjust it later. You just want to hang on to it so that the strings don't get pulled out of place. It's just a rough placement. So then the next one, you will put the yellow color. And then the last line, this is where you would place the red color. Okay, so what you have now, you would have 4 groups of string, okay, attached onto the disc. And before you start, you just want to check from the bottom here that the strings or the chords are all nicely attached onto the ring, that you don't have them running around like what I have here, okay, because as you are placing it, it gets a bit messy. So you just want to neaten up and push the string all the way to where it was at the start, at the base of the swivel portion, at the rounded portion of the keyring. So it still becomes like that. So you don't have string getting stuck in the swivel gear of the keyring. So it's all pushed down to the rounded portion. Okay. So once that is done, we are now ready to start our braiding or weaving process. Okay. So essentially it's a repetitive motion. We will start always with the string that's on the right hand side of the tool. Okay, so I will lift the one that's on the right hand side, and then I'll bring it over and put it down right next to where the 2 yellow strings are, and I'll put it in place. Okay, so now the bottom 3, I choose the one that is on the leftmost, pull it up, then I put it on to the left hand side of where the single yellow string is. Okay, so after you're done with the yellow color, You now do a quarter turn, and you do the same with the red. So where the two red is secure, you pick up the one that's on the right, and then you put it down on the right of the two. Then you pick up the leftmost one and pull it up and put it on the left of the single red that is on top. Okay, so then you continue by repeating what you've done. Turn a half turn, pick up the one that's on the right, flip it down, insert it into the place that's on the right of the two, pick up the one that's on the left, flip it up, and put it on the left of the single. Okay, then another quarter turn, pick up the one that's on the right, pull it down and put it on the right, pick up the leftmost, flip it over, and go on to the left. So by now, you don't have to hold on to the keyring at all. It's usually more or less suspended near the center portion. Okay, so you can leave it alone and just hang on to the disc. But then, of course, you turn to a quarter turn again, and then pick up the one that's on the right, put it down, pick up the one that's on the left, flip it up. Now, should you need to take a break, then this is what is advisable. You pick up the one that's on the right, and you flip it down, and then you go for your break. So when you are ready to continue, you know that the top string has been flipped down already. Then the next step you need to do is to pick up the one that's on the left and you flip it upwards. So you don't have to decide what color you're working on or which set you're supposed to follow, because you know that this is half done. So you complete the second half and then you move on by turning the disc half a quarter turn. Okay, so then we continue with the left side flipping up. So this is basically the repetitive portion of making the cord. And depending on the thickness of your cord, you can complete making a decent length in a fairly short amount of time.
Maybe Hui Lian can also show us how to, make sure the cords at the end don't get tangled up at the back. So do you stop to occasionally like neaten it up?
There are some people who use bobbins to wind all this into bobbins so that they don't have the chance to do this tangling. But generally, as long as you pick up the whole string, okay, and then as you are placing it, you just pull it through. It should not tangle. So if you are speeding through and you just leave it here, and then you move on to the next string, then what is at the back here might have a chance to tangle, okay? But if I were to do this, I lift up the right side and I place it down and I just run my finger through like that. Then it should lay fairly flat. There shouldn't be any tangling. They are all free and not mixed up with the other string. You just need to run your finger through. Okay, so you don't have to do this for every time you're making a pass, but every full round, you just do it once or twice, and then it should untangle the mess that's at the bottom. So the keyring that we are doing today, you're dealing with fairly short lengths of yarn, so you should not create too big of a mess. But suppose you are wanting to create a cord that is very long, say over 1 meter long, then the string you're using would be obviously a lot longer than what we're working with today, right? So then you can choose to wind up the string onto a piece of cardboard with a slit cut into the cardboard so that you can stick it in and not have it unwind itself. Then that would minimize all the tangling issues that you might have. So there are people who use very long strings to create very long cords, and they cut the cords for different purposes. But today we are focusing on working just a short length to make the key ring. Okay, so if we were to take a break and see what we have created so far, if you flip to the bottom of the disc, you should be able to see a little bit of the cord that you are creating. You can see the spiral. Okay, how the two colors are spiraling up. Something like that. Yeah, so it's slowly growing. So as you do the weaving more and more, from the bottom you would see the cord growing. You will lengthen more and more.
So so if I have more than 2 colors, so as long as the spacing between the pairs are, as long as I have that number of blanks that you mentioned, is it?
Yeah, so like what we have now, every time you flip down, you need to have a space here for the string to rest on, right? So there needs to be at least one gap. Yeah. So I can have many colors as long as there's one gap between each color where the new string can rest. Okay, and then the old string can go up. Then so this with many colors. So today we're just looking at a simple scenario where you have a lot of gaps in between, but you really need so many gaps. So we have samples where we work with multiple colors, where there are like 3 colors. This one has got 3 colors: the white, the dark green, and the light green. So that would mean instead of this 4 pairs, I would have 6 pairs.
Then it should be spread out evenly.
So I will just move them closer to each other. Whether it is completely evenly spaced or not is not very crucial. You just have to make sure there's some gaps in between where you have space for the string to go. So you can make more colors. That means a thicker cord. So the one that we are doing today is fairly thin because you only have 8 strings intertwining, right? But you can see this one that has got more. Thicker cord.
Much thicker.
So because this one has got 12, right? So if you add more colors, you would definitely have a thicker cord. So the thin ones you can use for things like shoelace if you want to. The thicker ones you can use them as bag handles. So the yarn that you choose can also have effect. Like I choose a very fat yarn here. Okay, this is only 8 cords because it's only 2 colors. Right? Look at the difference in size. Okay, so this, if I use an even thicker cord, or if I use 12 pieces of cords to make a thicker braid, this would be a nice handle for a bag. So you'll be comfortable enough for you to hold as a bag, like handle. The rest, this one would be thin and just nice for you to just hang on to the bag for a key ring. So the options are endless. You can choose different combinations to work on.
This I was thinking this actually looks a little bit similar to the crown knot for the macrame. But I've not tried it with two colors, so I don't know if the effect looks the same.
Because this one is easier to manage in the sense there is no thing. So you don't have to worry about which one goes first. It is sequential, like you just need to follow the sequence of the steps where you do it one at a time and you get this twisted spiral effect.
Yeah.
Macrame would give you something similar, but that one involves tying knots. So the order of the string that goes on top of the knot and what goes below would give rise to a different look.
Yeah.
So that one is something slightly different, but you can get similar effect.
Oh, okay. Is there, by the way, an estimation of roughly how long, like how do you estimate this length to cut for the length that you wanted in the end?
Basically, whatever length you want, okay, like this one, we were thinking of making it into a bracelet, like a friendship band. So you estimate about 2.5 to 3 times the actual length, the finished length. Then you cut that length for one end. But the example that we are doing today, we are looping over, right, the key ring.
Yeah.
This is actually twice the length that you need. Okay, because if I'm doing this without attaching, this might be this thing with no loops, right? That's how you measure. But you want twice the length if you're going to create a loop and loop it onto the keyring like this. Okay, so the single length that you need is about 2.5 to 3 times the finished length of the project.
Okay.
So that's the estimate.
Okay. I should try to.
I guess another question that would be good to ask at this point is it only spiral effect that we can get with this form of braiding?
No, you can create a lot of effects. You can even do pattern work. It's just a matter of planning, because what we are doing now is we are doing the braiding in one direction. You can choose to have it in one direction for one round, and then you change the direction. So the pattern that you get on the cord will be completely different. It will spiral in a different direction, and there are some people who would try to do mixing colors. The effect is different. You will not get an actual spiral, you will get a more dotted look. So all these are up for experimentation. You can just play around with colors. Like right now, we are having the 2 cords with the same color as a pair. But if you were to have different colors, like I have yellow and black, and then I have 2 reds, yellow and black, the cords would look completely different. You will have a dotted look instead of a spiral. Yeah, so on one of the spiral, you will have dots instead of a continuous color. So this is something you can just experiment with. But what we're doing today is really the simplest design, where you see the 2 colors intertwining in a spiral design.
So I guess we should encourage our participants to keep their disc so that they can, use the disc for any other form of yarns or cords that they have at home.
Basically, because you don't need a lot of material to start this particular craft, you can use whatever strings, yarn, you can even use like raffia, you can use twine. There are many materials that you could use to get yourself started experimenting with what effects you get from the braiding. And there are people who also experiment with placing beads. Okay, so those who are interested with beads placement, then what you do is before you start with this, you would string the beads on the end, and then you tie a knot so that the beads don't fall out of the end of the string. And then when you are doing the flip, okay, suppose I'm ready to flip the red now, then I would hold up so that it's out of this, and then I would place the bead pull the bead down to where it is now being braided, and then you would then flip. The bead will be caught here. So then it will be reflected on the cord, okay, where the bead is showing off, popping off the cord itself. So there are lots of things that you could play with. There are sequins, there are beads, and just beads alone, you have got different textures, different designs, different colors, different sizes to play with. So your cords can be very interesting, and it's not just plain string.
I think Hui Lian has a sample with beads on it, right? Do you have it near you? Because I remember you did one sample piece.
This one is where really big beads. Okay, and then you could just I meant to use it like that. Okay, then of course you could do small beads.
Maybe you can hold it up because the bead's very small. It'll be hard to see.
Okay, so these ones, the beads are fairly spaced out, as you can see. I didn't have them spaced very close to each other. Then further down, I put them closer to each other.
So you had beads on every strand of cord, or did you have them only on one color?
I have them only I have them on both colors, but I only have them on the right hand string. So I didn't have them on both strings. I only have them on one string. But if you have them on both strings, then instead of this, okay, so you can see that it is a spiral. The beads is on a spiral. Okay, but there are gaps, vertical gaps where you don't have beads because I only have them on one string. So if I had them on every string, it would be fuller. You will have beads in the middle where there are no beads now because I only had them on one string. Yeah. So depending on the process of how often you pull the bead up and as you're braiding, you get a different gappy feel. Like this one, I only pulled up one per round or every 2 rounds, then I pull up one. Whereas this one, every time I come across a string with a bead, I put the bead up. So you can see the different effects. So if I have the bead on every string, you will get a tighter spiral. So it will look like this because you will have more beads coming off the string.
Can we see how you started? Because if they were to do this again, they might not have the key ring. So maybe you could also show the participants how they should start if they didn't have a key ring.
Okay, so if you don't have a key ring, then what you would do is you would also still fold the string in half, like what we did at the start. Okay, and you will be holding on to the loop here. What you will need to do is then tie a knot so that this is all attached and in one bunch. Okay, so with this bunch, you would also insert it in the middle of the disc, and then you do your placement of the string according to your color bunches, and then you get yourself started. Only difference is with something like this that is not attached to a key ring, if you want to attach to something later, like a key ring, you will have to use a split ring for jewelry, for mostly for jewelry making. You just get your split ring so that it is now attached to a ring. Then the ring can allow it to attach to something else, whether it's a metal fixture for earring or lanyard or whatever. Yeah. So this is more versatile in the sense you could make your cord and decide what you want to do with the cord. Right? Whereas what we're doing today, because we started with you attaching it to the key ring, this is more or less fixed as an attachment to this key ring. Yeah. So if you want to change the function of this, you can, but it means that you need to cut the cord and then glue the ends so that it doesn't fray, and then attach this to something else. Should somewhere down the road you don't feel like using it as a keyring anymore, you can just snip it at this end, then glue it. Okay, so the string doesn't fray, but you keep the cord intact. Then you will have to insert it into the end cap like you would with, say, your lanyard. This is your end cap. You put it in so that it is attached. Yeah, and then with this end cap, you can attach it to something else. Okay, so
must you always fold the cord in half? Because let's say if I needed 8 strands of cord, Couldn't I just take 8 different colors and just knot them together?
You could. The only difference is if, let's say you're not folding, but you're using loose ends, then what you have at the loose ends, in order for you to be able to attach this to something, you definitely need an end cap. Okay, whereas because I'm using the length 2 times of what I want and fold in half, I can attach directly to the keyring like what we're doing today. So I won't be able to do this with loose ends. With loose ends, I need to first attach this to an end cap, then use a split ring to attach it to the key ring. So it's basically options of what metal wear you want to use, depending on the color options. Yeah. So if you want 8 different colors, then of course you don't fold in half because you'll be working with 8 different colors on your disc. Right? But because we're doing color groupings here, you can have the option of just folding your thread in half by doubling the length. So
yeah, maybe this is a good time. Can we use one of our samples to maybe just show how we can glue the end cap so that at least because our participants have to leave. I'm not mentioning participant by name because this is going into a recording, the public recording. So, so that the participants who have to leave early kind of know what's going, how they can finish off, and then I mean they don't have to feel you know, worried that they have to leave the session early.
Okay, so the end is fairly straightforward. Okay, so when you have all the cording done, okay, say on your disc you're happy with the length already, and you finish your last flip. Okay, what you then need to do is to take out all the string. Okay, take all of them out and then tie a knot. So this is what I've done here. So I took this out of the weaving disc, okay, and I tie a knot at the end. Okay, you just need to make sure your knot is tight and that you don't have any loose end coming out anywhere because you want this to be a neat end, right? And then get ready your end cap with the lobster claw. Then your glue. Okay, so to get your glue ready, you will need to puncture the top of with the pin. Okay. And then this end, this is so that you can have a more precise application, right? This is the applicator end. Okay. So this is what.
Sorry, I just have a question for how to maintain this because I think the last time I tried to use super glue, then after that it got dried in the elongated part thing.
Yeah. So after you are done gluing, okay, because this cap is actually not very airtight. If you are only using this for a little bit and you are not going to use it for the next 2 months, then I suggest you unscrew it and you put the black one back.
Okay.
And then this tip you need to clean. So you use a push pin or something. Clear out the glue. Because this end isn't very airtight.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you say use a pin to clear it, we should, I mean, typically when I clear it, I'll wait for the glue to dry and then I'll use a push pin to just like remove the entire dried glue. Or should we clear it while the glue is still wet?
I would suggest, while the glue is still wet, use like a cotton bud to push out as much glue as you can. Because the pin is very thin, if the whole tube here has got dried glue in it, it may not be very strong to push out the glue. You have to exert a lot of force, right? So if you push out most of the glue using a cotton bud, okay, or yeah, then you only have some glue, especially at the tip, to deal with, then it's easier to clear with the pin. Yeah. So this method, you do waste a little bit of glue, but the whole tube, you can keep it for longer. Yeah, because the black cap is definitely more airtight than this orange one that goes on to the end like this for the applicator. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So for now, this end here, where I've got the knot tied up really tight, okay, you want it very tight and you don't want it to have any loose ends coming off. Then, because we don't need all this ends of strings, right? Because you're done with the weaving, you just want to snip very close to where the knot stops. Okay, so you will have just a little bit, just a little knot. Then get ready the end cap. Get your glue ready. So you will put a bit of glue inside the cap itself. Okay, you don't want it to overfill, so just fill the tip of the end cap with the glue, and then you will apply glue onto the knot. Okay, you apply it onto the side of the knot. And then insert it into the end cap. So twist and turn so that the knot gets into the end cap and gets fitted inside securely. Okay. So then just let it dry. So this glue, you need to let it dry for a good day, about 24 hours, so that it is then secure. Then clean off any excess glue before it dries. Okay. Then you can then use this and attach. So this end for our project should be attached to the key ring, and then you will have a complete item. Okay.
At that particular sample that you're working with, the spiral looks a little different. Did you use a thicker cord for one color?
No, so this one, when I was doing it, I pulled harder on one color for some reason. So you can see bumps, right? You can see that it's not quite even. It's a bit bumpy. So one color is more tightly pulled than the other.
So that could be a pattern, I guess, if our participants wanted to.
Yeah, so that's something for you to consider. Like this one, definitely you can see the bumps. Okay, this one is definitely not flat. So the white color is a lot thicker compared to the green. So that was because I didn't have the white in the same thickness. I chose a different yarn, and that's how I ended up with something that has got texture. So it's not quite flat. You can see that it's a bit of a bumpy texture.
Yeah.
So when you combine yarns of different weights, you can then, of course, result in a different particular look.
I'm just wondering also for the thicker yarn one you showed, do you also use this one? Because will it damage the foam?
No, you just need to be very careful. The foam is quite forgiving.
Oh.
Yeah, the foam is quite forgiving. And when it is thicker, you don't really need to pull it very much into the gap. Like when it's thinner, okay, you tend to want to just pull it all the way right to the end where the gap stops, right? Okay.
Yeah.
With the thicker yarn, you don't really need to do that. You just need to jam it so that it doesn't shift. So you might just jam it to just the shallow portions of the gap, and then you're done. Because it wouldn't, so it's tighter, so you don't need to pull it all the way to the end. But let's say you want to use sewing thread, or you want to use really thin embroidery floss, then you might want to push it closer to the end because you want it to really sandwich it so that it doesn't shift too much when you are doing the other groups. So this one would work. I actually use the same disc for this. So there are different combinations like this one also. So this one is a thinner one compared to this pink and yellow one. But yeah, they're all using the same disc. So all the samples were made using the same disc. And you can just be playing with colors, playing with textures, to get different combinations.
I guess another question would be if like participants like to play with this, and where can they go to find the findings, or if they needed extra thread. And I guess it's also to let them know if you do need, or if you want to get like specialized bobbins for this braiding. Let's say you decide to do very extended projects and you want specialized bobbins or weights for this project, then clearly you can always come back to us, because we do carry the more advanced sets with because we have the set with the beads as well, right? So the whole braid will be beaded. Yeah. So that's also, I mean, feel free to explore using your own materials, but if you do need somewhere to go to, that's where you can come back to us, of course.
Yeah. So some people like having a weighted center because it stabilizes their weaving right from the start. So today we didn't introduce the idea of a weighted center because the key ring actually gives it a good weight. So it doesn't interfere with your weaving. You're able to start fairly smoothly. But for those who are just using a knot like this at the start, because it's not heavy, it doesn't pull towards the downward center, sometimes you might find it pops out when you are lifting the threads, right? So for those who are really into the craft and they want more options, instead of just anchoring to metal finding like this, they would start off with a metal weight in the center. So they hook on a metal weight, so it weighs down, and then as you're braiding, it just goes fairly smoothly. Because the weight helps you keep the tension here, so you didn't have a lot of trouble with all the pulling because the key ring actually weighs it down. Yeah, so it's easier to start with a weighted center than something that is not anchored to something that's heavy. Yeah. So weights are fairly useful. And today we didn't include the bobbins because the length that we are using is fairly short. Like this is about 0.5 meter long. So the tangling issue is not very obvious, or it doesn't really tangle because every time you put your finger through to run it through the string like this, it clears up the potential tangle, right? But if you have very long string of, let's say, 3 meters, you might want to wind it up into a bobbin or wind it up into a cardboard, right? Or like those for embroidery floss, something to keep your yarns neater. Yeah. Okay.
I
Thanks
think
so
what
much.
we're trying to show here is like how you can get started with this like at the most affordable way. But with any craft hobbies, the more you get into it, then there's actually a lot of other things you can think about and you can consider. But I mean, for now, this is just a quick start to this, and then because I know like you do embroidery and beading, so this might be something that you can consider incorporating into your own craft.
Yeah, it'd be quite cool to experiment more. Yeah. Sorry, I gotta leave now. Thanks so much for the session. I'll continue on and hopefully I'll finish this soon. Yeah.
Yeah, have fun.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, then you should continue, finish it, and then demo the joining one more time.
Okay, potentially this is a tangle. Just need to run your finger through and then you clear the tangle.
If you have the tangle again, do slowly how to wind your finger through can. Because this part I'm gonna like speed up your braiding, but can you like create a tangle again so that I can have a tangle part to edit?
Creating tangle is so natural.
You just create a tangle and then explain slowly how to remove the tangle.
Tangle is almost ready. Okay, so sometimes When you don't clear the yarn, you get what you call a tangle here. And so you need to sort out the tangle. You start with the ends and you start to make sure the ends are loose. And then sometimes if you see the loop around, you try to identify just one and make sure that it's clear. Then when you see a loop like this, pull the loop out, okay, so that it is clear. Then look for another loop. So basically you look for a loop that is horizontal, and you gently tug and run your finger through. So
Why don't you just pull it like, I mean, why do you start untangling from the end and not like just pull it, look for a loop right at the start and then just yank the loop up?
Generally, if you have something right at the start and you try to yank it out, sometimes it tightens the other loops at the end here. So as you are yanking, you might tighten the loops here and you will aggravate the tangle. So that might cause the tangle to be more difficult to clear later. So when you clear from the end, the ends are, because they are all loose ends, you can easily pull it out without causing the upper portions to tighten.
Okay, so must remind all participants, if you have a tangle, remember to start untangling from the end, where you're nearest to the cut end.
Yeah, it's always easier to work with a loose end than to work with further away from the loose end. Because when you tug on a loose end, you're likely to just pull it clear. But if you're further from the loose end, then it is likely you're going to tighten what is below it. And then that might cause more trouble for you when you're trying to pull out the other strings.
Really, how long do you estimate that our participants have to be braiding for to get the length that they need for the key fob?
Typically, it should be within 30 to 40 minutes for the key fob. So if you are looking at watching TV, listening to an audiobook, the time passes quite fast. To avoid tangles, really, after every round or so, run the fingers through, like what I'm doing here, and then just run it through. So the tangle doesn't have the chance to build up because you are clearing it from time to time. You don't have to do it for every pass, but every few passes, yeah, you should just do it. This would give you less headache. This is the metal wear to get ready, which is got the end cap that's attached to the lobster claw. This is the end of the weaving, where you have got a decent length, and the head is attached to the keyring. Okay, so when you decided this is the length, then what you can do, just pick the ends and tie the knots tightly. Tie it very tightly. Do at least a double knot. And same thing for the other set of colors. So then you take the whole thing out.
See the hair because I have a feeling most
Clean. Now we'll make sure that the knot is secure and tight. So then with the glue, okay, you first puncture the top of the glue with a little pin on the cap, then attach this. So now put the glue inside the end cap. So the tip of the end cap will do.
The glue, can you bring the end cap closer to the camera?
So you may not be able to see, but you're not filling up the whole end cap. You're just filling the tip of the end cap with the glue.
So it'll be like maybe 1 or 2 drops of glue.
Yeah, and then you can choose to coat the sides of it also, just by using the applicator. You will now need to trim this end, trim it close where the knot is. Okay, just trim and close it. So if you want, you can coat it with a bit of glue so that it's easier to manage. Just a little bit, maybe a drop or 2. Re-tap your glue. So with this, you can use your yarn to help you shape the end, okay, so that your hands are not getting glue all over. Or if you don't mind, just pinch. So after you are done, you then attach by inserting it inside. So what I've done here is to insert already, okay, because I put the red end first, which means the red end is actually secure and tight. The yellow end is all inside the cap. You can then trim the excess and into the end cap. So you twist to secure it inside. Then once the glue dries, you now have a complete keyring on one end, a lobster claw on the other end. And when you want to attach, you can hook it onto the swivel part and have this around the handle of a bag to keep your keys at easy reach. Okay, so then this one can be detached.